I'm 11 books behind on my reading goal. So let's read 11 books in 11 days. I currently have a lot of free time on my hands, so I should be able to do this. I'm not gonna plan any of the books I'll be reading because that's a surefire way to get me into a rut. The only book that I'm 100% set on is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez because this library hold is very, very overdue. So yeah, enough yapping, let's get started. Okay, I've only just started, but I'm already triggered by this ex and his brother. I think this is why I can't do romances with tropes like dating a family member, because I just think it's weird. Personally, I can't get behind it. I think Jacob is like my favorite character already. I don't know, I think it's just the descriptions of his anxiety and stuff really reached a part of me. I feel so much empathy for him already, and I just want him to be happy. And I'm barely in this one, and yet I'm like feeling it already. So I get it, I get the hype. And this is why we choose the bear. It is 7 p.m. and I have maybe read only about 30 or so pages. Not doing too well, but I'm gonna be hunkering down and trying to read as much as I can tonight. I have not stopped crying while reading this book. I don't think I should have been surprised given my reactions to the first book in the series, but I think something about the way that Abby Jimenez writes her characters, they just feel so real and you can't help but just develop so much empathy towards them. And then every little hurt that they go through, I'm feeling it as well. Yeah, it's good. It's really good so far. Didn't know much about this going in. I knew that it was the second book in the Part of Your World series. I knew that it followed the main character Alexis from the first book's best friend, and that's it. That's all I knew. So for those who don't know, it follows Brianna, who is a doctor, and there is a new doctor that has started, and they sort of have like a really bad first meeting, first impressions kind of thing, but they slowly become friends. And yeah, just the relationship between them is just so sweet and so natural, and I'm loving it. I'm swooning. It's just the characters they're such good people. I just want good things to happen to them. I finished up to page 184 last night, so I have maybe about half the book left. Time to get back to reading. It is day 3 and I have finished Yours Truly. I mentioned in my last update that I could not stop crying, and yeah, that held up pretty much all the way to the end of the book. I ended up rating it 4.75 stars. I feel like it was so close to a 5-star, and I think for the first half of the book or so it was definitely a 5-star, but then the pacing of it got a little bit weird, and I think this was a common complaint for other people as well from the reviews that I've read. Also, this is a little bit of spoiler alert. Feel free to skip ahead to here if you want to avoid it. I felt like the third act breakup just happened really late. Like they got together kind of late. So then for the last part or so, I could see what I was up to. I was just wondering like what was going to happen, like what's the shoe that's going to drop. And I felt like that kind of took me out of the story a little bit. I'm someone who doesn't actually mind a third act breakup if it makes sense, if it's logical to the story. Like I'm not wanting the book to be completely predictable, but it just felt like anything that could happen now just would kind of throw the pacing off, and it did. And I just thought that the actual issue was a little bit repetitive by that point. Besides that, it was very, very close to a 5-star. I loved the anxiety representation in this book. I could relate to a lot of what Jacob was feeling, and my heart broke for him so many times. I love their relationship. They're perfect together. I loved how protective they were of each other and just how much love and care they had for each other. And then I finished listening to the audiobook of Bookshops and Bone Dust. I had been listening to that for a while. I think I'll end up rating that maybe 3.75 stars. It was good. It just like wasn't amazing for me. I did really love the cozy fantasy vibes. I loved the characters. 3.75. I feel like it's not gonna stick with me maybe. I'm interested to see how I feel about Legends and Lattes because I do want to continue the series. The epilogue of Bookshops and Bone Dust does refer to kind of like maybe the end of Legends and Lattes, which I think was a little bit spoilery, but that's on me for reading this book first. And then I also started I Was a Teenage Slasher, started the ebook on my Libby, and yeah, this was interesting so far. The writing is really different to anything I've read before. I've heard this author is really good with horror stories. I don't normally read horror, but this was also nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards, so I am keen to see how it goes. And that is my update for the start of day 3. It has been way too long since my last update, but in between then and now, something happened in my family that was quite sad. So I won't get into details right now because I don't really want to talk about it just yet. Needless to say, I've been very distracted, a little unfocused. We persevere, we'll keep going. I'm pretty sure any progress I made in my reading goal has now been basically for nothing. Since the last time I updated, I've only gotten up to about 35% of I Was a Teenage Slasher. This book is taking me a lot longer to get through than I would like for it to. The writing itself is just really not clicking with me. It just feels really jarring in my head, like it just doesn't flow. The actual story itself is interesting. It follows the main guy who becomes a slasher, which, you know, it's in the title, but this is him recounting all the events years ago that led up to now. It's set in Texas in 1989, and it's a really interesting story. It's very unique, at least to me. I don't read much horror. I think it's just not my vibe. I will keep going with this book. I feel like I'm invested enough that I don't want to DNF, but it's definitely taking me longer than it would maybe some other books. Try to do this challenge as like 1 book a day. I don't think that's happening. That's okay. We're gonna try, we're gonna keep going. But yeah, that is my update. I just highlighted this quote. Pretty fitting, isn't it? I am taking so long to read this book, but I am gonna keep going because I do want to know what happens and what the ending is. Apparently the ending is quite good, maybe close to halfway through. I finally finished I Was a Teenage Slasher. It took me way too long to read this book. To be fair, I had a lot of stuff going on, so that probably didn't help. Also, it's not my preferred genre. I don't really read horror, so that also probably contributed to it. I ended up really enjoying the last 20 to 25% of the book. Everything really came together very well. You could really tell how much care the author had for the story, the characters, just in the way he handles all the small details. So there's no like real big plot twist or anything at the end, but there are just like minor details that you noticed at the beginning throughout the story, but never really put much thought into it until you see it at the end and you're like, oh, that makes sense now, I can see it all. So yeah, I really enjoyed storytelling. So it's really made me intrigued to read his other works. I've heard good things about, I think it's called The Only Good Indians. I'm really keen to put that on my TBR now. I still stand by the fact that I wasn't a huge fan of the actual writing itself in terms of the dialogue, the way the internal monologue is handled. I think there were just a lot of things about the actual writing that just I couldn't click with. It just didn't work for me. So yeah, I feel like because of that, I can't rate it more than 2.5 stars, but I did really appreciate what the author was trying to do and how he went about it. Anyway, the next book I am going to be picking up is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This has been on my TBR for a very, very long time, so I'm very excited to get to it. It's also quite short, so I am also hoping this will help boost my reading goal a little bit. Just because this last week I've fallen behind again by a lot more. This was meant to be a reading 11 books in 11 days thing to catch up, but I've fallen behind. That's okay. I think from tomorrow we'll be able to get a little boost and just keep that momentum going. I am about 30 pages in and I am so confused. It's obviously meant to be confusing. I just want some answers. I finished This Is How You Lose the Time War. I am definitely in the minority with this. After having this on my TBR for 5 years, I'm not gonna lie and say that it wasn't a slight disappointment. I knew that it was a sapphic sci-fi book going in and that the book mostly is in the form of letters to each other. I just didn't expect to be so confused for the majority of the book. So we have Red and Blue, who are agents of opposing sides of a war. They start a correspondence with each other, which, as you can probably guess, leads to a forbidden romance. There were a lot of of things happening in this book while also not really addressing any of it. The world building and plot are definitely lacking, but I think that was actually the point. I just don't think that it's for me. The writing is so beautiful, and honestly a lot of the times I could kind of ignore how confused I was or the questions I had because the writing was so easy to get immersed in. But you are essentially dropped in the middle of the story with no setup and you don't get any answers. I feel like a lot of people really love this book, and I get it, but at the same time I just don't think it's 100% for me. I still rated it 3.75 stars. I'm glad I read it. I'm not 100% satisfied with how it ended and my experience with the book. I've also started a safe keep today. I'm only up to page 20, but I am enjoying it so far. I think the writing has really drawn me in like immediately. After reading a couple of books where I just have not gelled with the author's writing style, I'm really glad that I'm not having that problem with this one. I'm really intrigued to keep going and see where this story takes me. I'm already really loving the main character, Isabel. I don't know what it is. Like, she's definitely prickly, but you can tell that it's due to like some anxiety in her life, like her need to control things because something's going on. And I just feel like I can really relate to that. She just needs someone to understand her. The only thing is I'm not sure about, I don't think this is a spoiler because I'm pretty sure this is what the book is like about. She's essentially going to be starting up a thing with her brother's girlfriend. And I don't do cheating, as in I don't like that trope in books, movies, TV, whatever. I know that there's a lot more nuance to it, especially if it's set not in modern times. It is something that it's in the back of my mind, and I'm just hoping that it's handled well. I guess we'll see. I am really enjoying it still. I'm loving the tone and the vibes of this book, honestly, and everything I said yesterday still holds up. I've only read about 67 pages. It feels like I've read more, to be honest. I'm excited to continue this. Hopefully I get through a lot more of it today. I want to finish it, but I don't think that's gonna happen. Yeah, I think that's it. I started this vlog 11 books behind on my reading goal, and I have finished still 11 books behind on my reading goal. I have decided to just wrap this up because if I keep going, this vlog is never gonna get published. Latest and last update is that I finished The Safe Key. This is the 98th book I finished reading this year, and only the second 5-star reading. I feel like this year I might have gotten pickier with my reading. There were a lot of books that I really enjoyed, and I feel like in another world, in another lifetime, I might have rated it 5 stars. I feel like there were more things in books that I read that I couldn't let go to kind of give it that 5-star read. This book isn't by all means perfect. I don't know if a perfect book exists, honestly, and maybe that's part of the reason why I don't give a lot of 5 stars, but there is just something so beautiful about this book, and I feel like it really poured out to me in ways that I didn't expect. It is a quiet 5-star read, I would describe it as. The other 5-star read I've had, it was like, wow, this is amazing, everyone needs to read this. This is a little different. I would still recommend it to people, but I feel like it wouldn't be for everyone. It was for me though. There was something about the characters, the way they were written, the way the whole story was written, the way all the little small details that you might not have noticed but sort of noticed, and the way they all kind of came to light and came together. It was done so well. Also, I love this like cover. I love the end pages. I feel like everything that I should have had a problem with this book is resolved in a way that I appreciated, and because of that I felt like I could be at peace with the ending. Also, I love the way that the title of the book really came together near the end. I won't say much about that. I feel like it's better to go in knowing as little as possible about that. I loved the way that tied everything together. I loved all the historical elements of this book. There was a lot that I learned I didn't know about before. It was done very well. So yeah, I will end the reading vlog there. It is now December, still 11 books behind, but thanks for coming along this journey with me. I will see you next time, and I hope you're doing a lot better on your reading goals than I am.